film which became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy.
Sager.
And I'm Joe McCormick, and joining us today, as always, is our excellent producer, Ramsey. If you love the visual style of this show, it's all Ramsey. He does it all. He's a wizard.
I like what's going on in the background here, the beginning of TCM 1 with the sort of like snuff film quality.
Oh, who does the voiceover on that crawl?
You mean the introduction crawl?
Yeah.
That's John Larroquette of Night
Court
fame, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
If only he could do the read at the beginning of the Star Wars movies in the same voice.
There's still time. So, if you're wondering, hey, what are you guys doing here? I thought this was a science podcast Facebook channel. Well, you're right. But every Friday, we do something called Trailer Talk. And usually, our Trailer Talks are related to episodes that we've released that week.
Yep.
But hey, film great Tobe Hooper died this week, and so we are all huge fans, and we decided this was a great opportunity to do a memorial. That doesn't mean it won't be connected to the podcast, though, because it turns out over the years we've done a ridiculous amount of podcasts that are related to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Cannibals come up a lot.
Yeah, for just to run through a few possibles, if you want to check out podcasts related to the filmography of Tobe Hooper, we've got Sex Cannibals of the Animal Kingdom
That's a good one.
Joe and I did. There's the Halloween Costume Made Me Do It that Christian and I did. We have Vampire Physics, Mathematics, and Evolution, as well as a whole host of other vampire-related ones.
The episode that we did 2 years ago that's about slasher films and how they treat Final Girls.
Final Girls, yeah. And then there's an older episode about spontaneous human combustion. It's been a while since I've listened to that one, but it does tie into one of the films we're going to discuss here today.
Now, of course, that tips us off to the fact that there are the great lights of the Tobe Hooper canon. Mm-hmm. There is the Texas Chainsaw movies. There is Poltergeist. We're not going to talk about Poltergeist so much today.
Yeah.
It's also, we only have so much time. We can't cover all,
we can't
almost
hit 'em all.
20 films he did. We wish we could. But
there's also the canon films part of the Tobe Hooper canon.
Literally the company canon.
Right. And so one of the great things about Tobe Hooper is that he made some great horror movies, and he made some great, terrible horror movies. So we'll try to talk about both today.
If you're unfamiliar with Canon Films, the company, I highly recommend, is it Electric Boogaloo?
Yes.
The documentary I think it's on Netflix.
It's on one of the streaming sites.
Yeah,
for sure,
it is a fantastic documentary about the history of Canon Films, and will give you some context as to how the heck these movies got made.
Yeah.
Typically, now it's not the case for all Canon films, but I'd say the main identifying feature of a Canon film is action movie from the 80s that has a poster with a guy holding a machine gun on it, and the poster was made before there was a script.
Sometimes the individual has a sword instead.
Yeah.
For instance, Masters of the Universe, big canon film, one of my favorites, and it is going to connect. It is going to connect into what we're talking about here today.
But in the case of these, I think Tobe Hooper and his collaborators actually had ideas for films. When we get to Lifeforce, though, I can't wait to talk about the poster for that movie because it's bonkers.
Hey, before we get into talking about movies, though, we should just say, if you don't know who we are, if you're not actually familiar with the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, we are a science podcast in the How Stuff Works family, and you should go to wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or maybe Stitcher, whatever the platform is. Check us out, Stuff to Blow Your Mind. Look up recent episodes and hit subscribe so we keep coming at you.
And also, while we're talking about these movies, hey, this is a great opportunity for you to communicate with us. So, we've got our buddy Nathan here in the room. He's looking at comments that you're going to be typing into Facebook. So if you've got questions for us specifically, too, they can be about anything. But if you want to ask us questions about Tobe Hooper movies, have at it. But what I want to know from you is what's your favorite Tobe Hooper movie?
That's right. And you can't say Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But that is going to be the first film we're going to look at here today. We're going to look at 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I say you can't pick this as your favorite because this is kind of a perfect horror film. It's one of the early slasher films, if not like the first real slasher film. And I would argue it's one of the few, if not the only original slasher films that maintains its uniqueness, that still can terrify and doesn't feel bland. Because
other than Halloween 4.
Well, but to your point, Halloween especially is one of those films that for the day it was great.
It's a little cold now.
Yeah, it's been so re-explored in every slasher film that came in its wake. It doesn't hold anything special anymore. This film is still special.
I watched TCM for the first time within the last 5 years, and it really upset me and made me sick to my stomach when I watched it. It holds up for sure.
It's one of those movies that you remember different than it actually is. So if you've watched it years ago and it's been a long time, you will probably remember it being very bloody. And if you go back and watch it, Christian, is it?
No, there's barely any gore in this movie. In fact, I just watched an interview with Tobe Hooper. He was talking to Mick Garris, another horror director, about how when they made this movie, they not only were they trying to avoid ratings problems, but they didn't have that much money, and so they really couldn't do any effects that would actually look creepy. In fact, we're looking right here at some. Oh no, it's actually a different scene, but the scene where Leatherface puts a girl on a hook, on a meat hook, in a slaughterhouse room in the back of the house. You never see the hook enter into the flesh of the girl's back or anything like that. All it is it's implied that she's put on the hook, and they put fake dried blood on the wall. You never see any actual graphic violence.
So this is one way in which almost all of the slasher movies that followed from this lost their way. They forgot what made movies like this scary. And they focused a lot on the knife going in shot, which is just
that includes Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It has a lot of that.
Though that's very different because Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which we are also going to talk about, was way less about the pure terror and was more of a satire.
Now, speaking of pure terror, Marilyn Burns, of course, is phenomenal in this. Is just
one of the great scream queens.
Yeah, great scream queen. Really is able to make you feel her terror. I think other things I really love about the original TCM is that the film quality just feels sweaty and dirty. Like you might be watching a documentary or a snuff film, and then the fabulous intro just I think sets a wonderful astrological tone for the entire film because you have sequences of these bodies that have been desecrated, but then there are these sun flares. There's this idea that cosmic disarray is causing this uptick in violence in the lonely Texas hills.
I agree with that. And okay, I got two things to say in relation to that. So the grainy film quality of this movie is magnificent and really, again, it really contributes to that just kind of sickening feeling you get when you're watching it. I can't understand why modern filmmakers don't just try to replicate this sometimes. We've gone into that found footage horror reality where there's sort of a bit of graininess to it, but it's still slick. But there's something about this that feels so real and primal. And then the other thing I'm going to say to that, along with the weird cosmic stuff that's going on, this is very much a story about what happens when the economy goes down in an American city. What happens to the American workers? This is like Tobe Hooper's cautionary tale, basically.
That comes up in both Hooper Chainsaw films. Yes. There's a lot of dialogue about the plight of the working man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should break that down for anyone who's not familiar with it. One of the key plot points in TCM is that these guys would happily just be butchering animals in the slaughterhouse, but they were put out of a job by automation.
Yep. Yeah, it's essentially the same thing that's happening with robots replacing our jobs, that kind of thing. It was happening in the early 70s with slaughterhouses.
Oh now, my God. What we really should have gotten as a sequel is what happens when the first generation of robot Leatherfaces get replaced by the second generation.
Oh my goodness. Can't you imagine? This is what they ought to do. They should have the next actual Leatherface Chainsaw Family film is the Chainsaw family, the Sawyer family, taken up arms against the robots in the slaughterhouse.
That would be pretty great.
That would be
well,
good.
Chop Top's already half robot, basically.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Kind of a cyborg.
Do we have anything else we want to say about the original TCM?
Just watch it.
Yeah.
It's
do we
great.
have any comments we need to address? No? Again, feel free to leave a comment. We will try to address it in real time. Hey, if you're just tuning in and you wonder what's going on, why are we looking at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who are these guys? We are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast in the How Stuff Works family. This is not the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. This is Trailer Talk, where usually we come on to talk about movies related to episodes that have come out in the previous week. But this week, Tobe Hooper passed away, the great horror director, and so we wanted to talk about him. I am Joe McCormick.
I'm Christian Sager.
And I'm Robert Lamb. And yeah, if you want to listen to podcast episodes about the science of cannibalism, the science of necrophilia even, kind of ties in with some of the stuff that we're going to look at in the next film, then head on over to StuffToBlowYourMind.com and find those episodes.
We've done it. We've spent hours talking about those subjects and doing the research. It's not just for fun. We're looking at actual science.
All right, well, let's move on to the 1986 film. Tobe Hooper's return to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Sawyer family. This is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
So he had a 3-picture deal with Canon, and I believe this was the first of the 3. Is that right?
That could be right, yeah.
What year was it again, Robert?
This would be 86.
So I was 9 years old, and I lived in Amarillo, Texas when this came out.
This is the year Aliens came out. This was a big year for films. So.
Yeah, they talk about Amarillo in this. They also mention Norman, Oklahoma. Because the family has sort of moved to the northeast part of the state, is my understanding.
Well, yeah,
right?
it suggests they roam all over Texas. There's like a nomadic murder family, and this one I think is centered in the town of Burkett, which is a real town in North Texas, right?
You also see that in this film that the family's been forced underground. They live in this wonderful, subterranean, hellish fun house of strung up lights and junk.
It's like decorated by the best party city ever.
Yeah.
You're supposed to assume that they've killed so many people that's where all of these skulls and skeletons are coming from.
Oh, and every time they kill somebody, they steal all their Christmas lights.
And the wall is just full of guts, too. There's a scene where Dennis Hopper kicks in the wall and just blood and guts falls out of the wall.
So you mentioned Dennis Hopper. One thing about this movie is it has a phenomenal cast.
Oh, yeah.
The cast is so great. Dennis Hopper plays a sheriff on the road to revenge who's got some relatives of his were supposedly killed by Leatherface.
So I was actually asking Robert when we started. I think it's supposed to be the kid Franklin, who's in the wheelchair in the first one, and then Susie, the survivor, right?
Yeah, like his niece and nephew.
Yeah,
and so he's been on the hunt for them, and there's a great scene where he goes chainsaw shopping, and he's trying out dueling with the chainsaw in the store there
because
while the owner watches.
If you're wondering, yes, there is a chainsaw fight in this movie between him and Leatherface, and I won't tell you who wins. You've got to watch it.
Now, Dennis Hopper is good-ish in this movie. There are times where he's out of his element.
Fantastic.
Well, I don't know. He can when he's going into rage mode. I can sort of see through the curtain a little bit, but there's no seeing through the curtain when it comes to Chop Top.
Right. Yeah. This is amazing. So I've heard for years about this performance. Is it Bill Moseley or Bill Moseley? Okay.
Moseley.
Now, people talk about this performance for years because this actor has gone on to do a lot of horror cinema, specifically with Rob Zombie. But this performance is so over the top, but kind of amazing.
It's like a constant stream of consciousness soliloquy about
his plate, about Nam, about
Namland. He just keeps saying that over and over again.
Because the idea is this is one of the Chainsaw brothers that was absent from the first film because he was in Vietnam.
Yeah,
and so actually. Ramsey told me that you were explaining this. I didn't understand this. This is circuitous, okay? But they're carrying around a corpse throughout the whole film.
Yes.
And that is the brother who gets hit by the truck at the end of the first one?
Yeah, that's apparently the hitchhiker from the first film.
Okay.
It's pretty great. Now, one of the returning actors, Jim Sydow, returns as Drayton Sawyer, the cook, the chef.
Also a fantastic actor.
Oh, yes.
Every bit as wild as Bill Moseley, actually. Like, he gives these long monologues where somebody's cutting down his house with the chainsaw, and he starts yelling about the government. Like, he thinks maybe it's the IRS.
Who pays taxes.
Yeah.
He has. It is, very much. Even more so, this is about, like, the economic plight of the lower class in America and sort of like their reaction to taxes and government and essentially having to live in tunnels and murder people.
But I've also heard of this movie. I don't know how well this critique holds up, but I mean, I've heard people talk about this movie as a metaphor for 80s excess consumerism.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, there is a lot of excess in it.
Yeah.
They certainly have way too many skeletons in their home, that's for sure. Also, our producer's pulling this up right now. I love that the poster for this movie is a gag on the Breakfast Club poster.
It really sets the tone for the whole film.
Yeah.
Now, when this came out, not everyone dug it. And I remember when I was younger and I saw it for the first time, I remember having a slight negative attitude against it because I was like, oh, it doesn't have the same feel as that first film. Yeah. But now I view it differently. I think this is a perfect sequel to TCM. Like, it doesn't attempt to replicate TCM. It takes it into a new direction. It makes a new type of film.
Yeah, Tobe Hooper was like, what happens when I've got money and I can do something like
but
this?
You could more than that. Have made a sequel that just tried to do what the first one did again. That would have been terrible.
Yeah. Well, they've done that, actually. They have made sequels that try to do the same thing as the first one, and they're awful.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I really love about this, in addition to the lovely gel lighting we're seeing in this shot, is that while the first film had that iconic gritty soundtrack that really made it, this film has a lot of sort of Texan music. It's kind of a rockabilly film in some respects.
It's got such a great rock soundtrack. It's got Oingo Boingo. It's got Rocky Erickson shows up in it.
Oh,
yeah.
We should mention too that Tobe Hooper did the music for both these movies as well.
Okay.
Although in the interview I saw with him, he says that he doesn't describe himself as a musician. He says, I have instruments and I just do things with them.
And also Joe Bob Briggs, by the way.
That's a deleted scene.
A deleted scene, yeah. He died in this film. He died for this film, and his scene was cut as well.
One of the things about this is it recasts Texas in a different way. This is like the first movie makes Texas look the classic kind of slasher movie scary, rural, like outside the range of law enforcement and civilization, a place where you could go to get lost out in the wilderness and someone would kill you with the chainsaw.
Yeah.
This movie is more of an urban weirdness gonzo. Like,
it's supposed to be just outside of Dallas-Fort Worth, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I guess of the three of you guys have been to Texas, but I lived in Texas for a while. I grew up in Amarillo for 4 years, and my family lives there now. My sister lives in Azle, Texas, which is a town that is very much similar to the first movie of Texas Chainsaw. Yeah, he nails it. Well, Tobe Hooper's a Texan, too.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's so great about this.
And he tends to cast Texans in the film. So our final lady in this particular movie, I don't have her name.
Carolyn Williams?
Yes, she's great. She's a Texan.
Awesome. Yeah.
She
really
plays
good
this
actress.
DJ. The whole movie hinges on the idea that she's a DJ who, for some reason, cannot hang up on somebody prank calling her. For whatever reason, she's like, you have to hang up first. I can't hang up. And she's got like a producer who's helping her out, and he's really the worst victim of the family.
Oh, yeah,
in this
he gets
movie,
it
right?
bad.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of sexual tension in this film between
That's an
our
understatement.
star and Leatherface.
Yeah.
Leatherface is far more of a character in this one, and his dance is superior. The first film, he does more of a
multiple times in this movie.
He has like a little shuffle that he does.
Yeah.
Whereas in the first film, he just did the Natalie Merchant 10,000 Maniacs spinning with the chainsaw. In this, he just shakes it.
Leatherface Del Rey, the turnaround.
That's definitely, if anybody out there is doing Leatherface cosplay this weekend, I really want to make sure that you get the dancing down right.
Yeah, it's easy to just focus on the thrusting of the saw and the and just running about and chasing folks, but the important thing is the dance. This is a man who cares about the dance.
Absolutely.
I love how, spoiler for the end, if you don't want to know how this ends, just stop listening for the next 30 seconds or so. I love how at the end of this movie, the main actress, Stretch, she doesn't just escape, but she essentially becomes Leatherface.
The experience of having to deal with this family turns her into one of them, essentially.
You know, there's also kind of there's a Dante-esque journey that takes place, because just as Dante and Virgil go through the subterranean inferno and emerge at the Mount of Purgatory and then climb the Mount of Purgatory in order to ascend into paradise, we see the same thing with our hero here. She has to emerge from the underworld of the Sawyer family and literally climbs up this weird, funky, man-made, like, golf course mountain.
With a Texas flag at the top of it.
Yeah.
I think that's very insightful, although I thought you were talking about a Joe Dante-esque journey at first.
No. I would love to see a third Chainsaw film in which they go to heaven.
I was going to ask, you guys have seen the other ones. I heard that Stretch returns. Is that right?
Does she? I don't even remember.
Oh, okay.
I can't
All
recall.
right. Hey, listeners out there, this is a good time to ask you. If you've seen any of the other Texas Chainsaw movies, is Stretch in them? And also, hey, reminder, what's your favorite Tobe Hooper movie, and do you have any questions for us? Nathan, we got any questions? Nothing.
Right.
Come on, guys. Let us know. Let us celebrate Tobe Hooper together.
Well, let's head on to the next film here then. If we have nothing else about chainsaws.
Well,
do you have
before
a little
that,
more
we should just remind them who we are. We are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast in the How Stuff Works family. This is not the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. This is Trailer Talk, where we come on usually to talk about movies related to recent episodes we've had come out. But this week, Tobe Hooper passed away, the great horror director. So we're talking about some Tobe Hooper movies. But hey, if you want to check out any podcast episodes in our back catalog related to Tobe Hooper, where should we send them? Maybe Sex Cannibals of the Animal Kingdom. We talked about some great mating and devouring in that. What else?
Well, I have to say that just as far as text goes, on the website I have an article about a Monster Science article about Leatherface and hermit crabs and the comparison to be made there.
Did you ever do? You never did Leatherface in Monster Science videos?
Not so far, but hey, who knows?
We may be coming out with a new season of Monster Science if that's something you're looking for. So hey.
Yeah, let us know if you want that. Hey, one more, since we're talking about Leatherface, of course, getting crafty with human skin. I know y'all did an episode one time on the idea of making books out of human skin.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Anthropodermic bibliopeggy. It's a mouthful, but yes, that is the art of making book covers out of human skin, and we have a whole episode.
Yeah, particularly about the scientific evaluation of
whether
books
they're
that
real
are
human
supposed to
skin
be
or
made from
not.
skin.
Yeah.
So you can look those up wherever you get your podcast. Just go look for Stuff to Blow Your Mind at your podcast platform of choice, or you can go to stufftoblowyourmind.com, find out what we're about, and, of course, subscribe. Now, is it time to look at the next Tobe Hooper movie?
It is, and we're actually going to go back to 1985 for this one, so we're taking a step back.
A year before TCM 2.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be the movie Lifeforce.
So that answers the question. Lifeforce is before... Oh, man, this movie. This movie,
is one of the
you have not
weirdest
seen
movies
this movie,
I've ever seen.
Treat yourself. Yeah, this movie is out there. I think this movie is just so eminently able to be made into something really cool right now. I challenge you out there, make a Lifeforce remake. It's asking for it.
One of the great things about it, and I thought about rewatching it, and I held off. Maybe I should have, but I felt like this is a movie that was made for 13-year-old me. And it's almost a shame to tarnish my 13-year-old memories of a movie about space vampires and weird spaceships and space women that walk around topless for most of the film.
Now, Christian, let's just keep our mouths shut and ask Robert, only recreate it from your memory. Tell us what this movie is about from your 13-year-old self.
All right. It's basically Dracula, where, in Dracula, a ship shows up on the shore and it has a vampire in it, except in this case, it's an alien ship. And there are naked people in suspended animation. Yeah. One of them wakes up and is a beautiful woman. A bunch of British guys don't really know how to react to this and kind of stammer about for basically the rest of the film. And then giant bats attack and stuff blows up.
Yeah, pretty close.
If you want a lot of scenes of a naked person walking at an older British guy and the older British guy going like, that's this movie.
But I also love, like... If you really boil down its essence, it's essentially James Bond teams up with Professor Quatermass, and then they fight Space Dracula.
Yes.
Okay, so wait, which is which? So Peter Firth in this movie is James Bond.
Yeah.
And
then there's
Quatermass is the doctor guy who's working on Life After Death.
Yeah,
I'm
that
assuming
guy. The guy who's like, I'm a thanatologist.
Yeah.
Is this the actor Michael Gothard who?
No, that's Dr.
Okay.
Bukovsky, the guy who gets some of his Lifeforce drained.
You know who else is in this movie? The guy who plays Dwayne Barry in the X-Files. He's the
Oh.
astronaut. He's the main astronaut that comes back
crazy.
and helps them out.
What
Yeah.
were you saying, Robert?
Well, Gothard is cool because, he was, I think he was in one of the Bond films, For Your Eyes Only, but he played Father Barra, I believe, in Ken Russell's The Devils. You remember the guy with the glasses?
Yes, yeah.
He kind of has this,
What a
rock
fantastic
star
movie.
Inquisitor dude.
Yeah.
So Patrick Stewart shows up in this
Oh,
movie.
yes.
Oh,
It's
Patrick Stewart is so good in this.
fantastic,
Yeah. Yeah, Patrick Stewart gets possessed by the female vampire and has to act as if he is a naked 18-year-old Italian girl.
Yeah, so there's a wonderful scene where the main actor, what's his name again, the guy who plays Dwayne Barry, he goes and he's like kissing Patrick Stewart on the mouth because he thinks Patrick Stewart is this space lady.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's so good.
Lifeforce is so good. There, in a really bad way. There's some amazing special effects with these puppets that play, basically these space vampires come down, they suck the life out of humans, and then the humans they suck the life out of turn into kind of like zombie
Energy zombies.
Yeah, and they continue to suck the life out of other people around them until all of London is under like a zombie apocalypse kind of. And they have to somehow, Dwayne Barry runs across town through all these zombies and somehow makes it. It's phenomenal.
There is the life sucking out scenes are fantastic.
Oh, here we go. It's behind
there
us.
you go.
Yeah.
They suck it out straight through the holes in your face.
Yeah.
So you just kind of go face to face, and it's like all of the blue stuff comes out.
Oh man, the special effects. The
I didn't even
spaceship
know
in this
humans
is so
were
cool.
full of blue stuff.
Yeah.
Neither did Tobe Hooper until they sat down and they made this, and they were like, we got to build these zombies somehow.
Now, I want to throw in here, if you were, like all of us, are intrigued by the idea of space vampires, you should check out our summer reading episode, Summer Reading, Aliens, Microbes, Cocktails, and More, because Joe and I discuss Peter Watts' novel Blind Sight, which is an excellent, essentially a fun hard sci-fi novel in which space vampires play a role.
Yes.
Maybe that's the remake of Lifeforce that I've been looking for.
I think
Is
so.
when
I
Blind
think it would
Sight
make an
gets turned
interesting
in.
film.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think there's only so much we can show of Lifeforce, unfortunately, because most of it involves nudity. So should we move on to another movie?
I guess so. How about... Oh, by the way, if you're just tuning in, you're like, who are these guys? We are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast in the How Stuff Works family. This is not the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. This is Trailer Talk, where we come on usually to talk about films related to episodes we've done of the podcast recently. This week, Tobe Hooper passed away, so we're doing a retrospective talking about some of our favorite and most interesting Tobe Hooper films. And, of course, maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Robert Lamb.
Christian Sager.
I'm Joe McCormick, and we've got our trusty producer Ramsey here with us. Ramsey is awesome. If you like the visual style of this show, that's all Ramsey. He is a killer.
So
we've also got our friend Nathan here with us writing down comments.
Nice.
So if you want to leave a comment or a question, get in touch with us and have us respond in real time. Hit it down below in the comment section. Nathan will pass it on to us, and we'll try to reply.
And one of the things I want to know from you are, what is your favorite Tobe Hooper movie that we haven't covered yet? Because we've hit the big ones. I'm going to spoil it for you all. We're not going to do Poltergeist. We feel like Poltergeist has pretty much been seen by everybody. But tell us about some Tobe Hooper movies that you think we might not know about.
All right. I believe we are going to travel once more to 1986 for this one. This makes me wonder if just how many films Tobe Hooper made in the middle of the 80s.
A lot.
We got a comment
busy.
here before we get started.
Oh,
on
yeah,
that.
yeah. Rick asks, what topics do you have planned for the Halloween season?
Oh,
man.
That's
So
a
many
great
things.
This is a
question,
fun
Rick.
one. So what have we been talking? We don't want to spoil too much, but maybe we can give a few teases.
Let's see. What were we talking about the other day?
We were just talking about one yesterday, and I can't remember what it was, but I know that we've talked about doing another creepypasta episode.
Yes.
So we, every October, try to have most of the episodes in that month be kind of Halloween-y themed. And usually,
sort of part of our style anyway. But
yeah, Robert and I usually do something based on creepypastas. We've done 3 of these so far. So if there's any creepypastas out there that you really like and you think would be great for us to take a look at and break down the real science of, send them our way.
Oh, I know. Robert and I had discussed the possibility of maybe doing an episode about the science of Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
There's more there than you might think, and so I think we might be able to work that
great.
out. We also talked about the possibility of doing an episode on the Golem legend. And
Oh, I have some
related to
stuff I
that.
can let you guys borrow from that from when I was in Prague.
Oh, yeah?
cool.
Yeah.
Does it include an actual golem?
Yeah, I brought one back with me.
Okay, good.
And
Make
but
sure the
I
etchings are
wiped
correct.
the etching off of its forehead, so don't worry. But we just received something from somebody on our discussion module the other day that was a request for us to do an episode based on a monster that you had already written about for Monster Science, and I can't remember what it was called now. But that could be
With the Linton werewolf.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
I don't know how much scientific material there is there, but hey, I mean, we love werewolves around here.
Yeah,
so
if
who
you've
knows?
got a suggestion, though, for us on something we could cover for our October Fun Fest of podcasts, please let us know, because that's really our favorite month.
All right, well, let's dive back into the trailers. We're going to go with some more science fictional Tobe Hooper here, Invaders from Mars.
This is
The
an
last of the canon movies, right?
excellent and a terrible movie at the same time. So it has that classic feeling of sci-fi, like the 50s sci-fi movies. It's got that classic alien invasion movie. And, of course, it's got a very, Invaders from Mars is like, how much simpler could you get?
Yeah.
Also, Karen Black.
Huh.
Karen Black's the
Yep.
mom, right?
No, I don't think so.
But she's in it, yeah?
I think Karen Black plays the nurse from school, who is the only person who believes our main character. So here's the basic plot. It's about a boy named David Gardner who watches an alien spacecraft land over a hill behind his house one night. He's like, Mom, Dad, aliens landed. They don't believe him. Nobody believes him except his nurse at school. But
Who just happens to be the creepiest actress in the history of horror films.
she's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
But,
Wait, is Karen Black, is she the one with the eyes?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's in Easy Rider. She's in Burnt Offerings. She's in a ton of stuff.
Okay.
This movie has that great style of like 80s kids adventure movies, unlike most of the other ones, and I guess more like Poltergeist. This one is like a PG rated movie, so it's like it's got kind of a vibe like the Monster Squad and the Goonies and Joe Dante's The Explorers.
I would say it definitely touches on Gremlins territory, because I remember seeing this as a kid, and it was scarier than I thought it was going to be. It was more Twilight Zone-y than I expected, and it kind of messed with me a little bit.
I think because you got this generation of filmmakers, right, who came up reading EC comics like Tales from the Crypt and some of that creepy and eerie stuff. They're heavily influenced by it. Then once they got enough money, they were like, oh, let's try to do something that will be allowed for kids will be allowed to watch the same way I was allowed to read those crazy comics. And you get this.
Or you could just urge parents to let their kids watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, that I'm sure there are some of you out there. I wonder if anybody out there has watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre before they were 10 years old.
Ugh. Now,
Are these the monsters, though?
Yeah, the monsters in this movie are fantastic.
Oh, wow. Just look at 'em go.
Creature effects by Stan Winston and John Dykstra.
Nice.
And they are so good. That's the best thing about the film. They've got great visual effects. There's a giant alien brain.
That looks pretty
There
cool.
are these Martian warrior creatures that prowl around. They're basically like a big mouth with these odd legs.
This reminds me of The Brain from a movie we chronicled
The
recently.
Brain.
Yeah.
I wish
Krang.
we'd remembered to do this one when we were thinking about movies with giant brains in them. But it just didn't pop into the mind. There's a great scene where the kid in this movie punches the giant brain.
So they're all these aliens are residents of Mars who have come to visit Earth?
Yeah, they've come to take over human bodies, so they like capture a human and inject him in the back of the neck with a thing that makes them a slave of the Martians doing their bidding. So it happens to pretty much everybody in the town over time, and the kid is running around with his nurse trying to get help. Eventually they go to the Marines, and there's a great line in the movie where this Marine colonel or somebody says, like, the Marines have no trouble shooting Martians, son.
So this has a little bit of an invasion of the body snatchers thing going on.
Yeah,
with
it kind of does. yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and a very strong you can't trust adults.
Right.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
which is a recurring theme in a lot of like kid sci-fi,
and is
kid horror.
absolutely true, right, Robert? You're a father.
No, absolutely. Well, you can trust me. Just don't necessarily trust the rest of the world.
This movie, I wanted to say about the cast. So it has the kid's father is played by an actor named Timothy Bottoms. You remember
Timothy
him?
Bottoms. Yeah, he was in The Last Picture Show.
Yes, he was. He also was in a very short-lived, do you remember this, a TV show about George W. Bush called That's My Bush, playing George W. Bush?
No.
Yeah, I
Was this on
remember it.
Comedy Central or something?
Terrible Comedy Central show.
Yeah, he was better than that. Timothy Bottoms, Class A actor.
Look,
He
probably
was
needed a
also in a movie, I think it was called Roller Coaster, about a guy who bombed roller coasters, and he plays the killer in it.
Weird.
Yeah. Nathan tells us he's in the adaptation of, is it Dalton Trumbo who wrote that? Johnny Got His Gun.
Interesting. Really.
This is the movie based on the Metallica song?
Well, I think the Metallica song is based on the book, right? And then the movie was made.
Another piece about the cast, one of the great Martian servants in this is the kid's teacher, who's played by Louise Fletcher, none other than Louise Fletcher, and she's definitely the best actor in this movie.
So Tobe Hooper had some clout and was able to get some real classic, character actors basically for this. So do we have one more?
Yeah.
Oh, we do. And speaking of great character actors, it's Brad Dourif.
Yes.
In 1990's Spontaneous Combustion.
Star of
so
Joe's
glad.
favorite Aliens movie, Alien Resurrection.
Go straight to the underworld. Just, don't even bring it up. Now, this movie is terrible, but it's great. It's kind of like Invaders from Mars. It's like, it's really bad, but it's also highly, highly entertaining.
Yes, I watched this for the first time in its entirety on YouTube last night and this morning, and it is a treat. For one thing, I like a lot of people, am a big fan of Brad Dourif. He always plays such wonderful, creepy characters, be it Worm Tongue or a mad scientist or
Child's Play.
Chucky. Yeah,
He's the Doctor in Deadwood.
Doctor in Deadwood, the Exterminator in Night Shift.
Oh, he's in Dune. He's Peter DeVries.
He's
in Dune.
Twisted Mentat.
He's in that classic X-Files episode where he plays the psychic who's supposedly getting in touch with Scully's dead dad.
Yeah. So there are just a million wonderful Brad Dourif roles out there. But when you think of films in which he has played the protagonist,
there are like none.
There's basically this and John Huston's Wise Blood, the adaptation of the Flannery O'Connor novel. This is pretty much it. This is your shot to see Brad Dourif for most of the film playing a relatable, likable, handsome dude.
Who can also set fires with his mind.
Well, that pops up eventually, but until that starts really happening in grotesque ways, you're like, hey, Brad Dourif's a normal guy. Dourif's a normal guy.
This movie, I would say, is basically, I've never seen Firestarter, but I know the concept. So this movie is basically Firestarter plus Scanners, kind of.
Does George C. Scott play a Native American who hunts him down?
No, but you know who is in it? We mentioned Masters of the Universe earlier.
Oh, right, yeah.
So the guy who plays Man-at-Arms in that film, let's see, what was his name?
John Cypher?
John Cypher, yeah.
Yeah.
He played Man-at-Arms in Masters of the Universe. He plays one of the evil doctor dudes in this.
Okay.
So it's about this guy. He's got all this trouble happening to him. He's like, why do I keep catching on fire?
I get
why do
mad.
I keep making other people catch on fire?
I get mad, and then I murder John Landis through the telephone with grotesque fire
I didn't know
powers.
John Landis is in this.
I didn't know either. You had to tell me. So he calls into a radio station to talk to like a radio psychic or something, and he gets put on hold, and then he gets mad about getting put on hold, so he sets the guy on fire.
I'll tell you guys a story about John Landis off air. I can't say it in public.
Why would you tease these people?
They can try to pester me about it at our live show at New York Comic Con in 1 month.
Hey.
That's right. We have that coming up.
What's the date?
I don't know it off the top of my
October
head.
6th. Yeah, okay. Friday, October 6th. If you want to look that up, get your tickets ahead of time and come see us live talking about Stranger Things, the science and pseudoscience of Stranger Things.
Now, this film concerns pyrokinesis, and one of the things about it is that it makes it gross. It makes it grotesque. Like you really feel that this is out of control. It's burning his body. It's incinerating other people. It's
his blood burns as well. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, it's just it's a wonderfully disgusting look at the Firestarter motif.
Now, Robert, I don't know about you, but for some reason after I watched this movie, I went on Amazon and ordered about 37 neon light-up telephones. Why did that happen?
Because they're all over this film. Every time someone's on the phone, it seems like it's some wonderfully 1980s alien contraption with neon inside.
I don't know if they paid to have their products put in this movie, or it was paid for by some neon company. I guess it was LEDs actually, but yeah.
I feel like spontaneous combustion is a good point for us to sort of take a look at the trajectory of Tobe Hooper's career, right? Because he started off as a college professor, then he made some short films, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, obviously the height of his career, but kind of the beginning of his filmography, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then he goes throughout the 70s and makes some very strange movies, mainly involving crocodiles. And then the Cannon films, which we covered all three of those Cannon films in the 80s. The 90s is really where it starts to get super weird, lower budget, and I feel like all of these amazing horror directors, like him, Wes Craven to a lesser extent, Joe Dante,
John
Carpenter, all these guys, by the late 90s, they weren't really making great stuff anymore. And Tobe Hooper came out with a movie in 2013 called Jinn, which I have never seen.
I heard it was quite terrible.
Yeah, but I have to imagine, this guy was brilliant at what he was doing, you know? It's strange to me how their career kind of rose and then fell.
He's one of those that even when he makes a bad movie, it's usually a very enjoyable bad movie.
Yeah, I think there's a false narrative out there about Tobe Hooper, though, that I probably bought into for a while, and that is that he through talent and luck made a great horror film right out of the gate, more or less, with TCM, and that everything else just is kind of falling behind that. Yeah. But I think it's more ups and downs, and even something like Spontaneous Combustion is an intensely watchable and enjoyable film.
It is hard to make a bad movie that is that much fun. Usually bad movies are boring. Sorry to say it.
Yeah, but not this one. This one is a real treat. I will say that at the beginning of Spontaneous Combustion, you're 100% on board with Brad Dourif. But he's so good at losing control and just raging out on the phone that you can see why he doesn't get many guy next door parts. He clearly God put him on this earth to play certain types.
Remember
of
him in Alien Resurrection when he's in love with the alien? He's petting the glass.
It's so good.
He's a force to be reckoned with. One of the greats of our time.
We've got to move on.
I think we're pretty much at the end here, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious if we have any questions or any comments just about the podcast or about Tobe Hooper stuff in general. Now's the time to ask them because we'll be signing off shortly.
Yeah. Or what's your favorite Brad Dourif film?
Yeah.
Brad
there
Dourif
we go.
role.
Look at him.
Oh, man.
Look at that lovely face.
Yeah.
He's so good. So do we have anything, Nathan? No? Okay. Well, look, here's the thing. We're such big Tobe Hooper fans that we're probably going to be watching more Tobe Hooper movies throughout the weekend. And we'll be keeping an eye on this Facebook live video and looking at the comments that you leave throughout the weekend. So if you weren't able to join us for this actual live stream, that's okay. Leave a comment. We'll get back to you later in the weekend.
Yeah, and join us next week. We will hopefully have another trailer talk coming at you. And I don't think we've decided on a topic yet, but it might involve some spinning death.
Ooh.
So tune in.
All right. See you all later.
Thanks.
You learned almost too late that man is a feeling creature. And because of it, the greatest in the universe. And he learned too late for himself that men have to find their own way to make their own mistakes. There can't be any gift of perfection from outside ourselves. And when men seek such perfection, they find only death, fire, loss, disillusionment, and the end of everything that's gone forward. Men have always sought an end to toil and misery. If it can't be given, it has to be achieved. There is hope, but it has to come from inside, from man himself.